Hello everyone, today I'm doing a special video because it is 45 years ago today that Elvis Presley passed away at his home in Graceland, and so I'm going to do a video about my memories of Elvis, what I was doing on the day that he passed away in 1977, and a little bit of a review of the Elvis movie, which I saw a couple of nights ago. So stay tuned. If you're an Elvis fan, you're going to want to hear all that I can tell you about Elvis. So my name is Dawn Dickinson, and this is my personal channel. You might know me from my professional YouTube channel, living in Northern Arizona. I have a link to that below in the description. If you're interested, please find me there. This is my personal channel where I just post anything that doesn't really pertain to living in Arizona. And so it's any topic that I feel like, and today I feel like talking about Elvis Presley. So if you like the video, please subscribe, because I'll be doing other videos in the future on all sorts of topics that you might find interesting. So I'm going to begin about talking about Elvis. Elvis died when I was very young. My family always were fans of Elvis. My dad was a big Elvis fan. Now, it's kind of funny because back in Elvis's heyday, women wanted to be with Elvis and men wanted to be Elvis. So my dad was the Elvis fan of the family. Oftentimes it was the woman. My mom, she was a fan, but she wasn't like super passionate like my father was. In fact, I have a picture of my dad from the 50s where he had the Elvis haircut. It was actually pretty cool on him. I love this picture. So when I was a little girl, of course, you had record players, and we would play Elvis records when the family was home just for fun. And I lived in we're kind of poor when I was young, so we had a small, always a small house. At one point we had a 2-bedroom apartment. We actually lived in a mobile home for a couple of years, and then just smaller houses. So you had one living room, and you either would be able to watch TV or listen to records or the radio or whatever. You know, you had to have the argument. I always had the argument with my brother. He wanted to watch TV, I wanted to listen to records. So none of this, you know, your own TV in your room or your own record player in your room, that didn't happen back in the 70s. So, but we did do a lot of listening to Elvis. And I remember back in, I think it was 1973, where there was the Elvis concert Aloha from Hawaii via satellite, and that was super exciting. Everybody was waiting for that. I remember watching it, although I was still, you know, quite young, so I don't remember the details that much, except really enjoying the concert. And then later on, they had the double LP. So that's the one album I associated most with family time, because we would play the Aloha from Hawaii vinyl LP, double album all the time in my home. And then later on, I got it on videotape. So then we not just had the sound of the Aloha from Hawaii concert, but we had the visual recording as well. So a couple things that I remember about when he passed away. It was 1977, and we were living in this tiny, actually kind of a yucky rental home. It was in Mesa, Arizona. It was between houses. My dad was quite genius back in the day. He made a lot of money. He would build houses. He wasn't a general contractor, but he was a draftsman, and he was very intelligent. And so we had sold one house and we were building the next one, and my dad did very involved. He would actually subcontract out the pieces of work, and we were living in the rental house. And I remember hearing on the radio that Elvis had died, and I'm like, no, that can't, no, that's got to be wrong, you know, Elvis can't be dead. And hearing that maybe it was drugs involved, and I'm like, no, that can't be right either, because, you know, Elvis was so clean cut. Of course, back in the day, you thought drugs were, you know, cocaine, heroin, hardcore drugs. Well, you didn't think of pharmaceutical prescription drugs being an issue, because a doctor prescribed them. They must be safe, right? So when they talked about drugs, no way was I thinking, you know, pharmaceutical medications prescribed by a doctor. Now, this kind of was a little bit of a precursor of what we have going on today with the opioid crisis, kind of like the beginnings of that. You know, everybody thinks it's safe because it was written by a doctor. Anyhow, Elvis's official cause of death was heart attack, although we know it was probably fueled by abuse of prescription drugs. But anyhow, I'm thinking, nah, that can't be right. Because remember Elvis going to the White House and visiting President Nixon and talking about drugs in America and wanting to stop drugs in America. Of course, he was thinking of illegal drugs because everybody thought prescription drugs were safe. Anyhow, again, I get back to it was actually a heart attack, but of course it was a heart attack, right? When you die, your heart stops. Anyhow, I was waiting for my dad to get home from work because my dad would always listen to the radio, and so he came home from work that day, and I'm like, did you hear about Elvis? And he's like, yes. And then basically didn't say anything else. We had our family dinner, and it was really quiet and somber because everybody was shocked. Nobody believed that it happened, but it did, and that was a very sad day for America, a very sad day for us. So I have the newspapers. If I can find them, I'm going to put them up, but I have about 5 newspapers from Elvis's death, and I did not buy, save them from when I was a little girl. I actually bought them on the 30th anniversary of Elvis's death off of eBay, and I've kept the collection. I actually have a collection of the President Kennedy assassination newspapers where I bought those from an estate sale one day. I see these newspapers for $2 from the Kennedy assassinations. Now I know, newspapers are a little bit clutter, kind of a hoardy thing to do, but for me it's pretty fascinating. So I want to say 2 nights ago, I had been wanting to see the Elvis movie so bad. Finally, I saw it 2 nights ago, and I was really impressed. So the young actor who played Elvis was Austin Butler. I had never seen him before. I'm not familiar with a lot of the young actors, but I have to say he did a phenomenal job. His voice, his mannerisms, he did an amazing job. He should be nominated for definitely an Academy Award for that. Also, they did a brilliant job casting the film. I have to say Tom Hanks did Colonel Tom Parker to a T. It was amazing, and what I liked is they portrayed Colonel Tom Parker as the crook and the scoundrel that I always thought he was. I thought he had ripped off Elvis his entire life and had a role in his death just by stressing out Elvis to the point where he had, become overweight and relied on prescription drugs. Of course, everything was going on that fed to his death, right? But Colonel Tom Parker, I always believed, had a big role. Tom Hanks did an amazing job portraying him, and the movie was excellent. Also, the casting, like I said, was great. The woman who played his mother, Gladys, oh my gosh, when I first saw her, I thought that's really, they must have just taken old clips of Elvis's mother, but it wasn't. It was an actress. And Vernon, they did a great job casting Vernon. Also, smaller roles like the Memphis Mafia. You didn't really see them much, but occasionally you saw them like in the background. I watched many documentaries of Elvis having the interviews from, I think it was Joseph Esposito and Charlie Hodge and all of his entourage, and the casting was amazing for that. So it was a great movie. Maybe it was a little bit long. They might have been able to cut out about 15 minutes worth, but definitely worth it. If you can still catch in the theater, it'd be great, but it's going to be out. Actually, it's already out on rental, so I definitely recommend you see that movie, especially if you are an Elvis fan. So I'm going to go tell you a few other things. So my father passed away at a young age of 64 of a heart attack. So it was very unexpected, just like Elvis. So I had a very hard time. I was 40 years old. Was devastated for years. I used to put on the double album, the Aloha from Hawaii, and just watch it and, laminate, whatever the word is, about missing my father and remembering Elvis and all of that stuff. And then about 2 years after my father passed away, I had a reading with Alison Dubois. Now, you might not know Alison Dubois, but after maybe 2007, there was a show on television called Medium, and it was based on her life. So Alison Dubois was the real life medium that was portrayed. She is probably one of the best readings I had ever had. And during the reading, we talked about her father had passed away maybe a year and a half prior to my father, and we kind of reminisced a little bit. And she said, wow, your father's death sounds very similar to mine. And we talked about it, and she says, I'm hearing this song. I don't know if you know this song, My Way. And I'm like, holy crap, I remember that. So she said it was important to her because her father reminded her the Sinatra version of My Way, and I always thought of the Elvis version of My Way, and how that reminded me of my dad so much, because he was very much, a strong presence, did his thing his way. And during the reading, we were talking about how I was so upset, thinking if I had been there, maybe I'd call paramedic and they would revive him, and she was assuring me, no, that wouldn't have happened. And in fact, in reality, when you see on television resurrecting heart attack victims, it's very rare they actually bring them back to life. But at the time, if you lose somebody, you're thinking that if I were there, he'd be alive and it's my fault. So we were, she was kind of helping me work through that. And she had told me that My Way was significant because my father had actually planned it that way, that he would die unattended to save the family of the drama of calling paramedics and witnessing the possible attempt for resuscitation, because it's like a horrible, horrible thing to watch, especially when it fails, and that he purposely died by himself, his way, to spare the family the drama. Now, I must say that actually having your loved one pass of a heart attack is probably the best way for them to go. You just don't want it to be at 64. You want it to be at 84. Because right now my mother is losing her battle to dementia, and watching a person deteriorate that way, suddenly not know who your children are, then not know who you are, that is probably a torture worse than death itself. So I am happy, it's almost 20 years, I finally come to terms with it. But whenever I hear My Way by either Elvis or Sinatra, or if I hear any Elvis music, it reminds me of that beautiful time in my childhood when I was close to my family, and my dad would come home from work and we would play Elvis records on the old Victrola. So that's it. That's my recollection of Elvis Presley. May he continue to rest in peace. Hard to believe it's been 45 years. I love the man. He is my favorite performer of all time. I definitely recommend you watch the movie, even if you're not an Elvis fan. It's just so educational. I can't even talk today. So educational. Definitely check it out. My name's Dawn Dickinson. My business channel, living in Northern Arizona. Please check that one out. But this is my personal channel where I'm just going to post anything I feel like it. So I'd appreciate it if you subscribe, because I'm going to do some interesting videos, and I would love to see you back here the next time I upload a video.